Hi everyone, it's Karla with Karla K Art, and thank you for joining my YouTube channel. Today I'm working on hand painted silk. So what I've done here is I've actually drawn a design on paper, and then I have copied that design onto silk using re.sist. And re.sist is a generic term for anything that will repel the dye, repel water, because the dye is carried by a water base. It allows me to put two colors next to each other by acting as a fence to separate and contain the dye and keep it from spreading. There are also different types of chemicals that you can stick on the silk, spray on the silk, or use on the silk. In some Japanese forms, they use water. There's also some different spray starches and whatnot that you can spray into the silk that will slow the flow or stop the flow of ink. But the process I prefer to use is still the re.sist that you draw onto the fabric. And the re.sist that I use is a version of gum arabic that's in the, I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that correctly, that's in the makeup of the re.sist. You can also use wax. You can also use, there's different re.sists out there that you can use that actually come out of the fabric. This particular re.sist stays in the fabric. It's considered a permanent re.sist, but if used properly and thinned down, you won't even feel it in the silk. You can't even feel the lines. They just exist to separate the different dye colors. So my dyes are in a palette like this. I start off with just the three primary colors. I have a couple colors of red and a couple of colors of blue and a couple of colors of yellow. And those colors are mixed together to make all the colors in my palette. So everything blends and merges really well. I get complimented on my color use a lot, and I think that's the reason why, is because I use such a limited palette. So these particular dyes that I'm using today are Tinfix dyes. They're actually made by a company called Sennelier, and Tinfix is being discontinued. The brand is totally being discontinued, so you can't get more of it. So I'll be switching either to Dupont dyes, which are also a French based dye, or Jacquard dyes. And I have some of both, and I haven't decided which one I'm going to use yet. I have the blue that I'm using now, the turquoise, is now Dupont because I'm out of the Tinfix blue, and I'm really enjoying that color. So I think I'm going to go to Dupont first and see if they meet my needs, and then if not, I'll switch to Jacquard dyes. The re.sist that I'm using, this permanent re.sist, is actually Jacquard permanent re.sist. And so it would be nice to keep all of the brands in the same family. So if I would like to use the same re.sist as I'm using the same dye, all made by Jacquard, but I will go where the colors lead me because the colors are ultimately more important to me. So what I'm doing now is I'm doing the bottom part of this image. It's actually, there's a crow down here, there's a raccoon here, and then there's a person, a female, a tree nymph hidden in the trees, and she's actually done with a clear re.sist. And then there's some dragonflies and whatnot along the whole entire piece here. And so I'm going to show you how I paint in some of these lines here, and I'll show you what these lines look like when I know they're going to hold, and what lines look like this line's gray here. I'm going to have to go over the top of it or it's going to bleed out. When you apply the re.sist, you want to make sure that it goes on thick enough to sit on the top and actually go through the fabric a little bit. You don't want it to sit on the top so much that it leaves a feel when I'm talking about how this re.sist blends into the fabric. I have it thin enough that it will do that, but I need the color to be dark enough to show that it actually sank through the fabric. And I don't need to worry too much about inside lines, because in my case, all of these colors will blend together, and some of the inside lines are just for decoration. But I do need to make sure that the outside lines are all black. And when they're gray like that, that means that they're not going to be a strong enough line to hold hold the dye in. The dye will leak out. Okay, so let's see what we got here. And you should theoretically wait for the resist to dry. When you start adding water next to it, it will expand a little bit. So you may want to wait till it's dry, and you also want to wait till it's dry to make sure that it's totally going to hold back the dye. I'm actually going to go on some of these that I know are going to work. So I apply the dye straight from the container. Everything in my dye batch here is the immediate color that it is. It's straight out of the dye bottle. It might be mixed together, but there's no water added. I add the water, and I do most of my blending actually on the silk itself. And so this is almost dry. It dries pretty quickly. I'm going to go ahead and go over the top of it. That's a different type of green, so you can see me blending these colors together. These flowers are all in the ranges of yellow. So here's a darker yellow, and then I might mix that with I have lemon yellow over here. The yellow is the fastest color to get contaminated because it's the lightest color. It's the fastest color to get other colors accidentally mixed into it. So I usually keep it separate and I just pour in a little bit at a time, because that way I don't contaminate a whole big container of yellow. And so that's how you do that. And then the center part of the flower, I've actually got some dark green, or kind of a army green, if you will. Doesn't look very army green there, but it actually is. It's an army green. And then I have yellow, and then I have purple. So here's that army green. Here's that army green. And sometimes I'll go through and do a bunch of shapes that are all the same color, and I'll do them all at once just to save on supplies, so you're not constantly rinsing out your brush and putting your good dye, all of your good dye, into the water. You actually use up what's all on your brush. And again, this is that dark yellow. It's almost an orange. And then I'm doing a little bit of lighter yellow outside of it. And then I'm using water to dilute. Now, here's where I should talk about water. I'm on a well here, and my well is about 500 feet deep, and I'm told by water experts that is a deep well, and that my well, nothing can live at that level, that depth. No chemicals or anything, no little organisms can live at that level. So I can use water just straight out of my tap. But if you're at home or you're on city water, you're going to want to get some distilled water to use, because if there's any chlorine or fluoride in your water especially, that's going to affect how the dye sticks to your fabric, particularly when it comes to making it wash fast and stuff. You want to make sure that there's no chemicals like that in your water. And you can get distilled water at the grocery store. You can buy it by the gallon. When I'm mixing up dyes, Procyon dyes for use on cotton, I have to use distilled water. They specifically ask for it, so I go and I get distilled water, and I just get it at the grocery store. This plastic thing has just gotten bent. It didn't come that way. These are just plastic containers that I got at Dharma, and I got them I bought the tips at Dharma too, because I wanted to make sure everything fit. But these tips, so that you know, are just mechanical pencil tops. So you can go buy a mechanical pencil, some mechanical pencils for cheap, and just use the tops of them. They come in different sizes. I predominantly use a 0.6, 0.06 or a 0.07. I like the bigger sizes. You can get a 0.04 and stuff like that if you want, but they're a little harder to clean. And the nature of the resist is to be a bit gummy, and it dries quickly. So your tips can get backed up and clogged. The 0.06 can be cleaned out. A silk pin, they're skinnier than regular sewing pins. A silk pin can fit in the 0.06 to clean it out, and the regular, you might think of them as the yellow ball-headed regular sewing pins, can clean out a 0.07. So I find it convenient that I can use those types of things to clean out the top of it, and I don't have to worry about using a piece of metal, also helpful. And I have several different shades of green pre-mixed up here because I knew this piece was going to involve a lot of green. I have a lot of nature in my work. I live on 5 acres right next to a huge managed forest called the Pilchuck Tree Farm. And if you recognize that name from the Pilchuck Glass Studio, yes, I am just about a mile away from Dale Chilhilly's glass studio. It's just up the street. If you want to visit that studio, it's open for a couple of weeks, I think, in the summer. And you have to get tickets to go and visit it. You can't just show up at their doorstep. The forest is also open. The Pilchuck Tree Farm the forest there is also open to horseback riders and to bicycles, just non-motorized vehicles. So if you're ever up this way, you can go out and check out the trails. There are a couple of places where you can get maps for the trails. I'm not quite sure where they are located, but they have a Facebook page. The Pilchuck Tree Farm does, and perhaps if you looked on the Facebook page, you could find them. Now I'm doing the mushrooms next, and mushrooms, in my experience, are either the turquoisey mushrooms or they're the really bright orange mushrooms. Those are the ones I typically see around here. I've already done some orange ones down there with the open circles, the white, orange, and white mushrooms. So I'm going to do these ones as the blue ones. And I'm just kind of ad-libbing it because I think actually when I see them, they're usually more of a blue, and I'm kind of giving them a turquoise tint, but that's okay. And then, I got to do the rest of the centers here. So it's dark green, then it's yellow, yellow. And this yellow is starting to look a little bit green because my water has now got some green in it from cleaning off the brush. And just that amount of green in the water can be used to dye the silk. So at the end of each painting session, when I have this water in here, sometimes I'll keep it instead of throwing it away because if it's a good neutral color, you can use it in the background of another piece and it saves you from wasting the dye. And it kind of works like a neutral gray if you're painting. And you might hear some noises here. My daughter has just taken my horse out and she's going to exercise her over here to the left. So you might, I don't know if you'll hear any clip-clopping or not, but if we do, it's just her exercising my horse. My horse's name is Goldie, and that's my other horse, and his name is Spook. The mare is Goldie, and she is a registered paint, but she's pretty much a Palomino. And the big guy Spook is also a paint, but he's white with brown, light brown and dark brown spots. Okay, so this is a raven. And ravens are all black, but for the purpose of painting a black image on a scarf, he's going to be a lot gray. He's going to have a lot of gray tones because if I just painted him black, it would look like just a big blob on the end of it. Plus, when you look at ravens, there's actually a lot of reflection off of their feathers. So the color actually looks a lot like just gray, and sometimes there's a bit of blue actually. So when I'm painting, a lot of times I need to mix just a little bit of color. So I'll just use one of these small palettes to mix colors in even further than my existing palette, which I already showed you. It has about, I don't know, 16 colors in here. So I'm going to be doing this black for the raven. So I'm going to actually just put some black. My black is actually not really all just black anymore. It has a lot of red in it from past paintings. And I will put some blue right here to be able to grab if I need it. So this allows me to put some water in here, just take a little bit and make some black. So first off, we have his beak, and we have this. I'm actually going to start with his head here, I think, which I want to be a little bit darker. So I'm going to do, poor Spooky misses his girlfriend, like this, and I'm going to let the dye spread up over his head to show the feathers. And I want it to be light up here because this is a place where the light will dance. And then for his bottom part of his beak, I'm actually going to make it really quite dark because that's one of the places where it will be the darkest. And then right along the edge of the beak, I'll do this because that will make it look like the feathers that they have coming right there are casting a shadow. And if it gets a little bit dark, one of the things you can do is just literally lift it. I have a paper towel down here, so I'm just literally taking some of the paint off. There we go. And then fill that in. And all of this area down here is fairly dark because it's in shadow. It's underneath his neck and underneath his head. The paintbrushes I'm using are watercolor paintbrushes. These are Grumbacher brushes. I had a college professor that asked me to buy these types of brushes when I was in college, and so I've stuck with it. So I guess I kind of do the same thing with my paint. When I use paint, I use Liquitex because of what a college professor told me. So if you're a paint manufacturer out there, you definitely want to get the attention of college instructors. My art degree actually comes in parts from 3 different places. I took drawing classes when I initially started college. I was going to a junior college because I was a very big athlete when I was little. Younger, I ski raced and I wanted to go to the Olympics. I was still trying to make the Olympic team, so I stayed around local, and I went to school at a junior college, Bellevue Community College, which has since become a 4-year school. And I then transferred. I didn't make the U.S. ski team. I did go to the Junior Olympics, but I didn't make the U.S. ski team. I came in 6th in both days of the giant slalom. That was my claim to fame. I didn't make the U.S. ski team, so I went away to college. I actually went away to Hawaii for a while and then decided to go to school. So then I went to Washington State University accepted me. I actually had a choice between Washington State and Alaska. And in retrospect, I kind of wish I'd chosen Alaska, but my family's from Ketchikan. But I opted to go to Wazoo. So I went to Wazoo for a year. And then Wazoo, I really permanently decided to get an art degree. And I wanted to study fiber arts, silk painting, as well as batik. I didn't even know about silk painting at the time. I just knew that I wanted to do the batik stuff, the fabric stuff. So I transferred to Arizona State University. I had some family that lived in Phoenix, and so they kind of helped me adapt to the move. And I got my final degree from Arizona State University. And then since then, I've taken college classes in computer-aided arts and whatnot at Phoenix College, and I've taken a lot of local art classes since then. I have not returned to get my master's or anything like that. I actually left the art field for a while and used my computer skills and worked for Snohomish County Superior Court there for a while as a program coordinator. I'm pretty organized, so they liked my organization and my computer skills. So you can see how I'm leaving a lot of this raven really quite gray. There's a little bit of blue in here from when I initially started this process. I dipped my paintbrush in a little bit of blue, but for the most part, it's just all gray. But it looks like a raven. Looks like a duck, walks like a duck. Must be a duck. And even though a raven's feet are all black, I'm doing the same thing with the gray. pretty good claws on them. When my mom was around, she had a parrot, an African gray, and I was surprised at how much damage they can do with those claws. They're about the same size as a smaller sized raven, and they're very long and they're very pointy and very sharp. So I'm going to continue on up this piece, but I think that this is probably enough for this video. Otherwise, it's just going to get way too long. Maybe I'll do a separate video of how this works as I get further up, maybe towards the person's face. If you like this video, press thumbs up. If you want to find out more about my work, you can subscribe. It's free to subscribe. It just allows you to get notifications about when I put out new videos. If you want to find out more about me and my work, you can press the 3 buttons, the 3 dots, the hamburger menu is what they call it, or you can press the down arrow if that is there, depending on what type of device you're watching this video on, and it will take you to links to my webpage, as well as explain in more detail exactly what products I used on this particular piece. So until later, hope you're having a great day out there. Bye for now.